it's kind of just, it's all over the news at the moment, is Dylan Mulvaney. I don't know if I'm saying that right. He is a trans activist, someone who's just done he's 12 months ago, he did a transition from being a man to, appearing as a woman, to put it bluntly. And to celebrate his 365th day as a pretend woman, Bud Light put out a commemorative beer can celebrating them and celebrating him and celebrating this whole thing. Now, straight afterwards, there was obviously a big uproar, and there's this call to boycott. And so I think that there's a couple of things for us to talk about in here, Dr. Rob, but I kind of want to look at, boycotting and the effects of that, but also talk about the actual situation. But Kid Rock went to social media and got out his guns and started shooting up boxes of Bud Light. Sales of Bud Light in the week that this has happened have dropped like 30%, and people all over are just going, this is ridiculous, this is garbage. I don't know. I don't know whether it's a genius marketing move because everyone's talking about it, or a major fail. And we can get into that later, but let's just talk about the situation itself. I think from a general point of view, this trend for organizations, and the VP of marketing said, we wanted to appeal to the younger audience and all that sort of stuff. So this is a marketing play to try to appeal to a new audience and try to be all inclusive. So what do you have to say about this being inclusive in our organizations like this?
Not much, really. I do think it's an example of getting on some kind of bandwagon. But I think it's also done in ignorance, because I don't think a lot of our CEOs and senior marketing people really understand the average person who really isn't buying into all of this. And I guess it doesn't surprise me all that much that sales of Bud Light fell. I don't know how long it will take them to recover, but I just think that CEOs need to calm down a little bit and go back to first principles and ask themselves, what is it that I'm selling? Yep. Where is my market? And work out your marketing plan based on that. If you're trying to target somewhat less than 2% of the population, go for it. But if you want to target a much broader segment of the population, you probably need a differently crafted advertising campaign.
Yeah, and so I mean, from a marketing standpoint, from just a practical business point, you said, you got to know your market. You've got to know your market. And the VP of sales said in a video that, hey, we're known for the frat boy market, and the younger market are no longer, the trendy market are no longer, we're not appealing to them and everything like that. And it's like, well, yeah, because that's not the type of person who drinks beer, or even if it is, it's a small market. And I know your frat boy market would be a very, very large percentage of the market. And I saw some parodies, actually, interesting, of some people, talking about this boycott, and they're like, these beer drinkers saying, well, it's Bud Light anyway. You're a trans if you're drinking Bud Light anyway. so it's funny. There's a bit of a stab there anyway. But knowing your market and jumping on trends, is this a genius move that's getting all of this phenomenal exposure, or is this something that's going to kill the organization?
Look, I don't know whether it will kill the organization, because there's a substantial portion of the population that really couldn't care less. They just shrugged their shoulders
Yeah.
at all of this. Look, honestly, many people I come across, they've really got no idea what's going on in current affairs. They've got no idea what's happening in social trends. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the church want to bury their heads in the sand, and they're not really aware of any of this that's going on either.
Mhm.
So, it's really hard to know what is the most sensible level on which to respond. I don't like really drawing conclusions about individuals like Dylan Mulvaney because I've got no idea what's going on inside his head.
Mm.
But one thing I would say is I think corporates need to be very careful that in their advertising, they don't parody women. There is still a category called women,
Yes.
and all those corporates out there, you need to understand that real biological women exist.
Mhm.
They represent nearly 50% of our population, and you need to be very careful that you don't offend them. In fact, you should honor them and uphold them. Those are the people we now seem to call biological women.
Mm.
And for all that's happening through various kinds of activism, I really think that the gender biological woman is being attacked. And I don't think that's something that anybody should stand for in the corporate or any other world for that matter. If people want to be different, if people want to dress as women, if people want to have sex changes, look, providing they're about 25 years or older when their brain has matured, if they want to make that choice, that really is their decision. And, it's their democratic freedom to be able to make that choice. But I don't think that gives them the right to try and colonize biological women. And I think that's
Yes.
one of the things that's going on. And I really do think we should stand against that.
Yeah, that's good. You mentioned about like standing up for, and obviously, unfortunately, the church has fallen quiet on a lot of these things as a whole. Um, are boycotts the way to go?
Look, if you boycott, one of the short answer is I just don't think it's possible. I noticed Eric Metaxas, whom I honour very much, he's recently had some social media posts out there saying, look, just stop buying from all the woke companies. I'm here in Australia. If I did that, I would really have to become self-sufficient, I think, because
Yeah.
so many corporates have actually become what we might call woke in their advertising. And look, honestly, it's being forced onto large corporates by shareholders. Large shareholders are starting to say to the boards of public companies, those are joint stock companies for our friends in the United States, they're saying to them, you've got to embrace this. And so there's shareholder pressure being brought to bear on a lot of corporates. It is very, very difficult to avoid spending any money at all on the products of woke corporations.
Yeah.
Perhaps the best thing we can do in terms of our food and so on, go to your local farmers market as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
There are other good reasons for buying as locally as you possibly can. But look, it's going to be really difficult when you're buying something like a motor vehicle or manufactured products. It's going to be quite hard to ensure that you don't spend any money at all on
Yeah.
these so-called woke companies. So I think we need to be wise as consumers. I try to make decisions when I spend that accord with my own moral compass, so to speak. And I think all of us should, as much as we can, but sometimes it's virtually impossible to make sure we don't spend any of our money at all on the products of woke corporations.
Yeah, because I wonder, my query is, or my thought is, it's all well and good to boycott, but like I've seen, people on social media boycotting a local bakery or boycotting it, and it really affects that business, and a small business, it'll really affect it, and it'll close down. But you hear these people that'll go out and call a boycott on whatever big corporation, whether it be Coca-Cola or whether it be Bud Light or Anheuser-Busch or whatever these big organizations. And yeah, it's trendy to do it now, but how long does it take for people to fall back into old habits? How long does it take? Like, oh yeah, I did my thing. I took a photo and posted it online. Said that I was boycotting it, and next week it's like, oh well, that's the beer that's on special, so I'll buy it, or that like actually no, that's the beer that I like, so I'm gonna buy it anyway, and and so I just wonder how much these actually last, and the interesting thing for me is, I'll be honest, when I saw I'm like, yeah, well, I mean, I don't drink beer anyway. So I'm like, I boycott all Anheuser-Busch stuff. Great, easy. I don't drink beer. But I'm like, that's something I could get behind. I could quite easily, because that was I really didn't appreciate that. So yeah, I could do that boycott. And then Nike have just sponsored him now as well, or done a partnership with him. And I'm like, I like my Nike shoes. It's really hard for me to find shoes that fit. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very easy for us to be selective. And then it's like, well, hang on a second. I've been buying Nike for years, and I'm well aware that there's this child labor accusations and all that stuff that happens. So do we be selectively moral? like what how do we, I suppose, going back to our question of the day, of like, when it comes to like boycotts and things like that, how do we make sure that we're not just following trends, either down a rabbit hole of doing this trans activism stuff, or just following a trend of boycotting? But how do we still be a leader while still following what actually might be a good thing?
Well, I would say don't take too much notice of social media influencers. Do your research as best you can by looking at a number of different news outlets, especially one or two that you trust, if you can find them, and then make your decision based on first principles. That's what I try to do. You use the term selective morality, and it's true, it is to some extent selective. You might find that there's no other manufacturer that produces shoes that fit your feet. Well, I'm not going to write you off as a friend if you buy Nike
Yep.
shoes. I might be in a position where it's not so hard for me to avoid buying those shoes. And I might add, I may not buy their products anymore because they've also announced that they will no longer be buying kangaroo leather, which is an Australian export, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and they have been using kangaroo leather in some of their products. They've recently announced they won't do that either. And just so happens that a friend of mine owns the factory, or is part owner in the factory that produces the leather.
Okay.
And that's going to be a pretty tough thing for that business. Now they've done that apparently because activists have said we don't want those darling little kangaroos killed, so that you can make shoes and other products. I think they'd make footballs using the same leather and so on.
Let me just make a PSA on that. We Australians, we eat our national emblems, the emu and the kangaroo. We eat them. They're good meat. They're good leather. They're good, like they're fine, but they're pests. It's not like that they're these. They are literally like rats in New York, right? Australia, like literally the kangaroos prevent our livestock from having enough food, and they're like rats. Like that's they're cute rats, and they're fun rats, and they're useful rats for eating and for their hides. So look, that's a PSA. Leave the kangaroos alone. Let us eat and yeah. Anyway, that took a turn for the worse.
There are official government culls of kangaroos. That's where most of the kangaroo meat and the fur and leather comes from. Actually, it's from the official government sponsored culls of kangaroo populations, because you were alluding to New York rats. Well, they breed like rats. when you get a bit of rain and there's a bit of feed around, they breed very rapidly. So there's no danger to their numbers as a result of these culls. But look, there are all sorts of reasons why you might make a choice to boycott a product. I don't think you should allow yourself to be swayed by the social media influencers, most of whom really have no standing, and they just have a big following. That's all. They don't really have much standing. Go and do your own research. The other thing I would say, in terms of where you might land as a leader, generally speaking, I'm not sure that leaders should be telling their people what to do,
That's really
but to give them a framework within which to make their choices.
Yeah.
So, and I think in a lot of these areas, I don't get too upset if close friends of mine make different choices to the choices that I make. So, as I said, if you buy a new pair of Nike shoes, I'm not going to write you off as a friend. I might make a different choice. And such is the case, say, with Bud Light. I don't even think you can buy it in my local liquor store. So it's, I can't really influence what's going on there at all, except, I guess, to offer my opinion on a show like this.
So I think to carry on with that thing that you said about, not listening to influencers and doing your own research and things like that. I think for me, like, it made me think about charity, right? And when you can walk around and you can have everyone shaking their tin in front of you, and you could end up broke by the end of the street, right? If you give to everyone. So one thing I learned a long time ago is, like, I'm the sort of person that my heart just bleeds for people when I see them. I'm just really empathetic, and I'm a sucker, and I want to be able to help everyone. And for me to be able to make sure that I maintained my budget, I went through a stage and went, okay, I'm consciously aware of the causes that I want to strategically support. And those are my causes that I'm going to support and give to, and then obviously keep my heart open for the leading of the Holy Spirit at times to give to other things, and that's fine. But I suppose like this is, if you want to become an activist, I suppose with, for lack of a better word, and boycott something or whatever, rather than just following trends, follow what is actually important to you. Is there a cause that's near and dear to your heart? Is there something that just really breaks your heart every time you hear about it or see it? Or maybe you've gone through it yourself and you come through the other end and you want to help people in that situation. Like, for me, one of my big causes is the reason why we do this is I've personally and seen too many people suffer under poor leadership. And we're on a mission to eradicate poor leadership, because I just don't want more people to suffer under poor leadership. That's the cause that I'm driven for. That's why we invest time and money into this and all our other things in our mobile app, where we provide absolutely free leadership development training. Yeah, link below and everything like that. Shameless plug. Yash, do up the nice banner thing on in here. But that's a cause that I know I'm passionate about, and we've invested time and money into that. So I think when I hear something leadership, Dr. Rod, that really drives me. It really does. And it really, I know that that's what I've been called to, and so I'll do whatever I can in that. Now, unfortunately, leadership is a very broad term, and as you can see with these examples, we can find leadership in everything. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube with Leadership podcast. If you've liked that, give it a thumbs up. If you've got any thoughts of how it challenged or helped your leadership, put a comment below, and we'd be honored if you would consider subscribing for more leadership content. Also, make sure you check out the playlist for more episodes like this.